Hi everyone, my name is Mwansa Richard Kayongo. I'm here to give you a presentation by the title of Robbing a Bank by Kent Category Imperative in Action. In this presentation, I explore how Immanuel Kant's moral philosophy, particularly his concept of the category imperative, applies to a moral dilemma. Robbing a bank to save a loved one's life. I will discuss Kant's key ideas, apply his theory to his case, and evaluate whether the act could ever be morally justified. Let's look at the overview of this presentation. This slide outlines the structure of my presentation. I will begin with a brief overview of Kant's ethical theory, then explain the three key formulation of the categorical imperative. I will apply each to a real-world moral case, robbing a bank for a good cause, and finish with a summary and reflection. Who was Immanuel Kant? Immanuel Kant was an Enlightenment thinker who believed that morality is grounded in reason. For Kant, moral value does not come from what we feel or achieve, but from acting out of duty in accordance with universal moral laws that all rational beings can accept. What is categorical imperative? The categorical imperative is Kant's test for determining moral rightness. It applies universally, meaning it holds for everyone at all times. Kant believed that the morality of an action depends not on its outcome, but on whether its guiding principles could be rationally accepted as a universal moral law. Now let's look at this moral scenario, robbing a bank. This scenario raises a challenging question. If someone commits a crime to achieve something morally good, is the action is too wrong? Kant's philosophy gives us a framework to test this by examining the principle behind the act, rather than its emotional appeal. Now let's look at the first formulation, which is universal law. The first formulation of the categorical imperative is about consistency. It takes us imagine what would happen if everyone acted in the same way under similar circumstances. If the world would fall into contradictions or circles, the action cannot be moral. Applying the universal law. If everyone justifies stealing in times of need, society will lose its sense of security and order. Banking system would crumble and moral trust would disappear. This contradiction shows that the robbing fails Kant's first test. It cannot logically be made a universal law. Now this takes us to the second formulation, which is humanity as an end. The second formulation focuses on human dignity. It reminds us that people must never be treated merely as tools to achieve our goals. Every human being has intrinsic wealth that must always be respected. In order to apply humanity as an end, by robbing a bank, the person uses others like tellers, guards, and custom as obstacles or instruments to achieve personal goals. This denies their autonomy and violates the moral principle of treating all people as ends in themselves. Let's look at the third formulation, the kingdom of ends. The third formulation views humans as members of moral community. Kant invites us to imagine acting only on principles that could be accepted by all rational moral agents, a society governed by reason and mature respect. Now let's see how we can apply the kingdom of ends. A rational moral society depends on trust and justice. If robbery were accepted, it would destroy those foundations. Therefore, under the kingdom of ends, such an act cannot be part of a moral world where everyone's rights are respected. Now let's look at the final judgment for Kant. Even if the robber acts from compassion, Kant's framework concludes that the action is morally wrong. Morality, for Kant, must be grounded in duty, not in outcomes or emotions. Good intention cannot justify breaking universal moral law. Now let's look at criticism and counter-argument. Critics argue Kant's ethics are too rigid for real life. Utilitarians, for example, judge mortality by result if the robber saves a life. They may find it justified, but Kant insists that moral principles must be universal, not situational. To summarize, Kant's ethics is grounded in duty and reason. Robbing a bank, even for noble reason, fails all moral tests. For Kant, the true measures of morality lies not in what we achieve, but in the principle we act upon. So for these references that you see that I've used here, these references includes both Kant's original work and modern interpretations. Together, they strengthen their presentations, academic credibility, and show engagement with both primary and secondary sources. Thank you.